Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
We've had a lot of success in recent years, and somebody who's been a part of that success and has made the ballpark experience great for everybody is Dan Baker in season 50. Dan, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me. I always look forward to being on with you.
It's so great to hear you, Dan, and so great to hear you in the ballpark. Dan, first of all, congratulations on the milestone. I know when we talked about this a year ago, it was like, yeah, you said, Steve, there was one game, and I'm not going to count that. Well, now it's official, and that you've done this. When you look back, and people ask me all the time to look back on mine, and so I understand the question and why it has to be asked. But what are the high water marks where you just look back with fondness beyond all others?
Well, of course, Stephen, is probably much the same with you. Winning championships. The Phillies have won 2 World Series in our 140-year history, 1980 and 2008. And I was fortunate enough to announce both of them. And I would have to say they are the highlights. There's a lot of postseason play. And, the early part of the Phillies' existence was not a successful one. From like 1883 until 1980, 97 years, they had been to 2 World Series. They won 2 National League pennants, 1915 and 1950. And they lost to the Red Sox in 15 in a close series. They lost 4 close games to the Yankees in 1950, the Whiz Kids. Since I started in 1972, the Phillies have played in 5 World Series, 1980, 1983, 1993, 2008, 2009, winning 2 of them. And, Steve, they would definitely be the highlights for me.
During the course of the game, are you the kind of guy that, I know you're doing public address announcing. There's a series of announcements you have to do. But do you keep score? Do you keep a scorecard?
Yes. Yes, and that helps me keep my place, too, for substitutions that need to be made and crossing out the names of the players that are already in the game and being cognizant who hasn't been used yet, who might be likely to come into the game, anticipating those changes so that I'll be able to do it quickly and accurately when the time comes.
So where is the scorecard from Tug McGraw throwing the final pitch in 1980? Where is that?
I don't have that. I don't save them. I know
Really?
some guys, save them and keep scrapbooks. Now, I have a lot of great memorabilia and a lot of, Philly stuff and autographed bats and balls and photos, and I'm so proud of. And I have just about every Phillies yearbook that was ever made, many programs, but I don't save the scorecards.
Interesting. Very interesting.
They're so scribbled on, Steve. If you would see my scorecard now, it works for me. But as I say, I cross out names. It's not a very neat thing to see. At least mine isn't, at the end of the game. But it's very functional, and it helps me keep my place and not make a mistake.
Well, that's what I tell my broadcasting class all the time. I do the State College Spikes games. I've done them for 16 seasons. And I tell them that the most valuable tool that you have, besides knowledge of the game, is your scorecard. And then I show them what my scorecard is, but I tell them, I said, look, that's how I keep it. I said, you've got to keep it in your own way, which sounds it's exactly what you do. You keep it in a way where you know what it means.
Yes, yes. And that's, not everybody uses the same elements in keeping score. Frontwards K, backwards K, F6, whatever it is. Sometimes people use little variations to either simplify it for them or make it easier to see or to understand. I'm pretty conventional when it comes to keeping score.
It's interesting you say that because I don't use the backwards K. I put down K and in the bottom corner L. Looking. Looking. So, I find that interesting. You've obviously, and you have been very open with us talking about you've had to fight some health challenges along the way.
Yes.
Who's really helped you along the way to make sure that you are game ready all the time? People that we would never see, know about, home, whatever it may be.
Well, my wife and my children watched me carefully. I just got home. I was talking to Matt, and I literally got into the door a minute. Matt called when I was still in the car. I had hired a driver. Unfortunately, when they removed the squamous cell carcinoma from my right maxillary sinus 2 years ago, it cost me most of the sight in my right eye. So I have not driven since then. So I've hired, well, my wife has taken me to a lot of places, many places. But there are times when she can't do it, or it's, into a lot of traffic or something. And we hire drivers, and it's worked out very, very well. But I've had a wonderful medical team at can I mention the hospital? Or
of course you can. You can talk about anything you want.
Jefferson University Hospital in Philadelphia has a great otolaryngology team, as well as infectious disease department. Anyway, the doctors and the nurses and the medical staff have just been sensational. One thing, Steve, that sometimes gets tiresome is just that, there's so many. I've had 24 surgeries, and the most recent one was last Friday.
Yeah.
And that was just a skin graft. But, anytime you go in and have to spend time in a hospital, hospitals and me don't mix well. I think that's true of most people, because you can't sleep in there. 3 weeks ago, I was in for a procedure where they took a flap from my left arm and put it on the right side of my face, because they're trying to get rid of this infection that was embedded in the bone. Yeah. And so I was in there for 6 days, but when I'm in there, and again, I have the best care. They take really good care of me. But I can't sleep. The call button's going off, and, the phlebotomist comes by for blood, and you got your medication, you have this and that, and this therapist comes in. And, but you know what? If this is what's necessary to allow me to spend a wonderful time with my family and friends and continue the career that I love so much, it's a price that I'm willing to pay, and I'd pay it over and over again. I feel like I'm very fortunate, Steve.
No, I completely understand and agree with that. There's another element to this too. When people talk to me about my career, for example, I've really been one that's always looked forward. Oh, sure, I have to look back. I mean, it's part of the job. You look back. But, like, for example, I got to go to Purdue in 2 weeks. I'm looking forward to that. What has the ability of you, Dan, to look forward to the next Phillies game meant to your recovery, your attitude, your drive?
It's meant everything, Steve. And I can tell it in your voice and the excitement you bring to Penn State athletics. It really, having those Phillies games to look forward to, being encouraged by the Phillies to get better and get back here, and we need you, and we miss you. And you know, when you're facing a health challenge with you know, an uncertain outcome, you know, you need all the positivity. I'm a positive person to begin with, so I was very optimistic that I was going to work my way through this. But, you know, you don't know for 100%. You know, you can be optimistic. But, you know, getting back with my family, my wife, my children, and friends, but getting back to the Phillies, and, you know, I received a lot of messages and, you know, texts and phone calls and letters and cards from people who said some very nice things and encouraged me to try to get back, and they'd like to hear me again. And
that was going to be my next actually question, Dan, and that is this: the fans love you. You're not going to say it. I'll say it. Okay, I speak for everybody. The fans love you, and justifiably. What has that love and response meant to you over and over again? Because you're somebody that is grounded, you're, you know, no ego guy, but still, what do the fans mean?
I want to use the same word, and if you'll forgive me for being redundant, everything. Just the thought, you know, those of us who are lucky enough to be in this business, as you and I are, the enjoyment that we get by bringing happiness to the fans, or the excitement, maybe helping to make their afternoon, or at least contribute to it, or to their evening. You get a wonderful inner feeling from that. And, you know, whatever discomfort I may feel, and I would, you know, what I've gone through, I would characterize, you know, some of those things as pretty uncomfortable, but I was never in excruciating pain. You know, like you hear somebody, and gosh, they had to go through this or that, and well, my stuff was not easy, but, you know, it wasn't like, you know, I'm in constant pain. It's unbearable. I've been very, very fortunate. But what I wanted to say, Steve, along those lines, and please forgive me if I'm being too long-winded, when I'm focusing on the game and the excitement of it and the fun that I have announcing the names, and hopefully the enjoyment that I bring to some of the fans from hearing the names called, that helps me forget, you know, the little aches and pains and, you know, things that bother you. So, you know, you're not, you know, some people who do suffer from a great deal of pain, they may have difficulty functioning as they would like to because they're in such distress. But with me, I mean, I'm able to put that out of my mind because, you know, the game, the Phillies baseball game is so important to me, and I have a responsibility to do it right, that I can forget, you know, the medical issues and concentrate on that baseball game, and it gives me so much happiness and allows me to forget any physical problems. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense to me. It's amazing that you can get into that area of concentration and, quote, your own world, and you can block out everything else around you and turn in great work. And you've been turning in great work. When you hear the words legend, when you hear the adulation you get from the longevity of all this. What do you think? Because people do think of you in that way.
I think how lucky I am that people would think of me in those terms. I don't know if I'm deserving of it, but I gratefully accept the acknowledgments and the kindness that people show, but I think it's me who owes them a thank you. I just love it so much, and when I'm at the ballpark and get the reaction from people, it's just so gratifying. And again, for me, Steve, it helps alleviate any, physical discomfort or, anxiety that you might have, because I just enjoy the game so much, and hopefully I'm helping them enjoy the game.
Well, whenever they call you a legend, I can tell you earned it through great work, longevity, and the fact that you're just a great guy. So I just want to thank you for being on with us, because we're going to have you on many more times as we go through, and you know that we're thinking about you all the time, Dan. And really, the work continues to be outstanding. You continue to make people at Citizens Bank Ballpark glad they showed up.
Oh, thanks, Steve. And keep up the great work with Penn State. It wouldn't be Penn State football and basketball without you.
Well, Dan, thank you so much. Thank you for the valuable time you gave us today, and the fact that you jumped in there like you did. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Steve, and thanks to Matt also. Great job you guys are doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thanks, Dan.
Bye, Steve. Thank you.